some benefit in that. And I find some productivity in that I can't goof around quite as much. That the day will end at around 5:36. That's just, if I didn't accomplish what I wanted to do today, if I get to that time, it's done. I'm over. I have to try again tomorrow. Whereas before having a family and before having kids, I could just like not do it and just make it up in the evening. So in that way, it's made me more structured, but it hasn't really changed my volume of work all that much. I still work about the same amount of hours. And that's, by the way, enough. This is one of the key points we make in It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, the latest book we wrote, is that there's enough time. 40 hours a week is actually a ton if you don't piss it away. Most people do piss it away. They piss it away in meetings. They piss it away on just stuff that doesn't matter, when even 3 hours, 4 hours of concentrated, uninterrupted time every day would move the goals they truly care about way down the field.
I think kids do make you more productive in that way for people who need it, especially people like me. They create their urgency. Like if you have to be done by 5, it's a maybe counterintuitive notion, but for people like me who like to work, you can really fill the day with fluff of work. And if you have to be done by 5, you're going to have to do the deep work and get it done. Like really focused, singular work.
Yes.
And then you're just going to cut off all the bullshit.
Honest. It keeps you honest, because you can squander one day, you can squander 2 days. But if I squander a whole week, I feel terrible. Now, that's just some drive I have in me where I feel content and full of meaning if I actually do stuff that matters. If I can look back upon the week and go like, that was a nice week. Really, we moved forward. Maybe we didn't get done, but we moved forward and everything got better. And I think kids really help just time box things in that way. And a lot of people need that, because I find just so much of the celebration of overwork to be so tiresome. Oh, I work 60 hours or 80 hours, 100 hours a week. And just like, first of all, no, you don't. No, you don't. Like, those 80 hours are full of all sorts of fluff that you label work, but that I would laugh at, and that most people laugh at, that you would laugh at if you actually did the analysis of where's that time going. Most of the important stuff that have to be done is done in these uninterrupted chunks of 2 hours here, 4 hours there, or 5 hours there. The hard part is making sure you get them in the whole piece. So don't give me that. There's time enough. And also, what's so important that it ranks above continuing your lineage? I think there's just some ancient honor in the fact that, again, this DNA that's sitting on this chair traveled 30,000 years to get here. And you're going to squander all that away just so you can send a few more emails?
There is something that's also hard to convert into words of just the kind of fun you can have just playing with your kids. I don't know what that, on the surface, it's like, I can have that kind of fun just playing video games by myself. But no, it's like, there's something magical about it, right?
I have 1,000 hours logged in Fortnite since 19, I think. All of it with my kids. I'd never be playing Fortnite. Well, I don't know if I never would be. I wouldn't be playing 1,000 hours of Fortnite if it wasn't for my kids. The enjoyment for me is to do something with them that I also happen to enjoy. I really love Fortnite. It's a phenomenal game. I don't have to force myself to play that with them. I often ask, like, hey, do you want to play Fortnite? But still, it's an activity that I get to share with them. It's a passion that I get to share with them. I've started doing go-karting with my oldest. Nice. I've been driving race cars for a long time, and now they're getting into go-karting. And just being at the go-kart track, seeing them go around, seeing them get faster, seeing them learn that skill, you just go look at, like, what else would I be doing with my life? At my age, 45, I'm standing here truly enjoying life I brought into this world. What else is it? It was so important at this stage that I would otherwise be spending my time on.
All right, like you mentioned, you like to race cars, and you do it at a world-class competitive level, which is incredible. So how'd you get into it? What attracts you to racing? What do you love about it?
The funny thing about getting into racing is I did not get my driver's license until I was 25. I grew up in Copenhagen, Denmark, where the tax on cars is basically over 200%. So you pay for 3 cars and you get 1. And I didn't even have the money for 1 car, let alone 3. So I could not afford a car growing up. We did not have a car growing up. But Copenhagen is a nice city to be able to get around on a bike or with a bus, or as I did for a long period of time, on rollerblades. But when I was 25, I realized I wanted to spend more time in the US. I wasn't sure yet that I was going to move there. That turned out later to be true. But I knew that if I wanted to spend time in the US, I needed to have a driver's license. I was not going to get around very well if I didn't know how to drive a car. So I got a driver's license at 25, then ended up moving to the US later that year. And I'd always been into video games, racing video games. Metropolitan Street Racer on the Dreamcast was one of those games that really sucked me into. It was the precursor to Project Gotham, which was the precursor to essentially Forza Horizon, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think that's how the lineage goes. Just a great game. I actually just fired it up on an emulator a few weeks ago, and it still sort of kind of holds up because it has enough real car dynamics that it smells a little bit like driving a real car. It's not just like an arcade racer like Sega Rally or something like that. But I'd always been into that. Then I got my driver's license at 25 and moved to the US. And then 2 years later, a friend that I'd met in Chicago took me to the Chicago Autobahn Country Club, which is this great track about 45 minutes from Chicago. And I sat in a race car and I drove a race car for the first time. And I had the same kind of pseudo-religious experience I did as when I started working on Ruby, where I did maybe 20 laps in this, basically a Mazda race car from, I think, like the 90s or something, like a pretty cheap race car, but a real race car, single seater, manual gearbox, but exposed slick wheels, all the stuff. And after having had that experience, first of all, it was just the most amazing thing ever. Like the physical sensation of driving a race car is really unique. And I think if you've driven a car fast, you have maybe a 2% taste of it. The exposure to the elements that you get in a single seat race car, especially one like that, where your head is actually out in the elements, you can see the individual wheels, and sensation of speed is just so much higher, is at a completely different level.
So can you actually speak to that? So even at that Mazda, so you can feel can you feel like the track reverberating? You feel the grip?
Not only can you see the bumps because you're literally looking straight at the wheels, you can feel all the bumps because you're running a slick tire. It's a really stiff setup. It's nothing like taking a fast street car out on a racetrack and try to driving a little bit around.
So can you feel like the slipping?
You can feel the traction. That's a huge part of the satisfaction of driving a race car. Is driving it at the edge of adhesion, as we call it, where the car is actually sliding a little bit. A couple of percent of slip angle is the fastest way to drive a race car. You don't want to slide too much that looks great, lots of smoke, but it's not fast. How you want to drive it is just at the limit of adhesion, where you're rotating the car as much as your tires can manage, and then slightly more than that, and playing at it, keeping it just at that level. Because when you're at the level of, or at the limit of adhesion, you're essentially just a tiny movement away from spinning out. I mean, it doesn't take much. Then the car starts rotating. Once it starts rotating, you lose grip and you're going for the wall. That balance of danger and skill is what's so intoxicating. And it's so much better than racing video games too, because the criticality is taking up 2 notches. I often think about people who really like gambling, where I think like, aren't you just playing poker? No, the point is not poker. Poker is maybe part of it, but the point is that I could lose my house. Right? Like that's the addiction that some people get to gambling, that there's something real on the line. When you're in a race car, there's something very real on the line. If you get it wrong, at the very least, you're going to spin out and probably hit a wall, and it's going to be expensive. At the very worst, you're not getting out alive. And even if modern race cars have gotten way safer than they used to be, there is that element of danger that's real, that there are people who still get seriously hurt or even killed in a race car. It's mercifully rare compared to what it used to be when those maniacs in the 60s would do Formula One and whatever, 13% of the grid wouldn't make it to the end of the year because they'd just die in a fiery, flaming fireball. But there's still some of it there. And I think that sense that there's something on the line really contributes to it. But it's more than that. It's just a physical sensation. There's activation of all your forces. There's the flow. And I think that really cements like why I got addicted, because I love that flow I got out of programming. But getting flow out of programming is a very inconsistent process. I can't just sit down in front of a keyboard and go like, all right, Let's get the flow going. It doesn't happen like that. The problem has to be just right. It has to meet my skills at just the right moment. It's a bit of a lottery. In a race car, it's not a lottery at all. You sit down in that car, you turn the ignition, you go out on track, and I get flow virtually guaranteed. Because you need, or I need, at least 100% of my brain processing power to be able to go at the speed I go without crashing. So there's no time to think about dinner tonight or the meeting next week or product launch. It's completely zen in actually the literal sense of the word. I think of someone who's really good at meditation. That's probably kind of state they get into, where it's just clear. You're in the now. There's nothing but you and the next corner. That's a really addictive experience. So after I've had that, I couldn't get enough. I kept going to the track every opportunity I got. Every single weekend for about 4 years, I would go to the track. And by the end of that time, I'd finally worked up enough skill and enough success with the company that I could afford to go, quote unquote, real racing. So I started doing that. I started driving these Porsches. And then as soon as I got into, quote unquote, real competition, I was like, I wonder how far you can take this. And it didn't take that long before I decided, you know what? I can take this all the way. My great hero in racing is Tom Christensen, fellow Dane, the Mr. Le Mans, as they call him. The greatest endurance race in the world, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, has been won more times than any other by Tom Christensen. He won the race 9 times. So Tom just really turned me on to Le Mans. I've been watching Le Mans since, I think, the 80s. I have my earliest memories of watching that on TV. The race has been going since, I think, 20s. But in the 80s, I got kind of into it. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Tom started winning, I, like pretty much every other Dane, started watching the race almost religiously. So I thought, you know what? I want to get to Le Mans. And this is the magic thing about racing, that if I get into basketball, like I can't set a realistic expectation that I'm going to play in the NBA, that I'm going to go to the finals. Or I get into tennis and I'm going to play at Wimbledon. That just doesn't happen. But racing is special in this way because it requires a fair amount of money to keep these cars running. It's really expensive. It's like having a small startup. You need to fly a bunch of people around the world and buy expensive equipment and so forth. So you need a bunch of capital. And I had some through the success of the company. So I could do it, which meant that I could get to Le Mans. So I set that as my goal. I want to get to Le Mans. And I started racing in real competition 2009. And 3 years later, in 2012, I was at the grid of Le Mans for the first time.
We should say, so Le Mans, 24-hour race, endurance. I mean, this is insane.
There are 3 drivers, mind you. So it's not like one guy just driving for 24 hours straight. But still, it's a pretty tough race, both physically and mentally, especially mentally. When you've been up for 24 plus hours, you're not quite as sharp as when you first wake up. And this is funny about Le Mans, too. It starts at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you've already been up for half a day by the time the race starts. And then there's 24 hours to go before you're done. And you'll be in the car for anywhere from usually an hour and a half to a maximum of 4 hours. The regulations say 4 out of 6 is the max you can do. I've spent perhaps 2.5 hours in a single stint at Le Mans. It's pretty taxing. You're going 200 miles an hour into some of these turns. And there's another 60 cars on track. Whenever I'm in my normal category, which is the LMP2 category, I have GT cars, which are more like a Ferrari and a Porsche, that I have to overtake. And then I have these hypercars, which is the top class, that are overtaking me. So you got a lot going on, and you got to stay sharp for 2.5 hours straight to do that. That is just a guaranteed way to get incredible flow for long, long stretches of time. That's why you get addicted to it. That's why I got addicted.
You got to talk me through this video of you in these LMP2s.
Oh, yes.
This is such a cool. This is so cool.
Yeah, this was probably my favorite battle of my career.
Sure. And Heinemeier Hansson has beat past and fight.
Yeah, so this is me driving against Nico Müller at the Shanghai International Circuit.
You're on the outside here.
I'm on the outside in the
How cool
blue and white.
This?
And we go a whole track around with basically a piece of paper between us. Sit down this back straight. I get so close to him because I want to force him over on the other side of the track such that he can't just box me in. And we've been fighting already at this point for basically 40 minutes straight.
Mm-hmm.
I've been managing to keep this professional driver behind me for 40 minutes. And he finally passes me, but we just keep the battle on for the whole time. And it really just shows both these kinds of cars, the Le Mans prototypes. We don't actually ever touch. We get within about an inch.
Yeah.
And keep going around the Shanghai circuit too.
How did you get so good? Like what? I mean, that's a fascinating story, right? That you are able to get so good.
I'm pretty good for the kind of driver I am, which is called the gentleman driver, which means I'm not a professional driver. And like many good gentleman drivers, when we're at our really best, we could be quite competitive with even professional drivers who have been doing this their whole life. The difference between us and the professionals is the professionals can do it every time, or more or less every time. So I can't be this good all the time. When everything is just right, I can be competitive with professional drivers. But that's not how you win championships. That's not how you get paid by factories to drive. You got to be good every time you go out. So that's a huge difference. But some of it was also just, I really put my mind to it. By the time I realized race cars is what I want to do as my serious hobby, I put in thousands of hours.
Have you crashed? What's the worst crash?
I've had a lot of crashes, but thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had any crashes where I've gotten really seriously hurt.
Have you wrecked the car?
Oh yes. I've wrecked many a car.
So what does that feel like? Just you wreck a car, how do you get...
It feels like total shit if you're in a real race and other people depend on you. It's not even so much the car, although it's also sometimes that these cars are expensive to repair and that sucks and it feels so wasteful in a way when you crash some of these cars. But the sense that you're letting a team down. Endurance racing is a team sport. Not only do you have your mechanics, you usually have co-drivers. So when I crash, I just feel like, damn it, I could have avoided this.
Yeah, but also, you could have died.
Do you know what's funny? I never think about that. I don't think you can. Because I think the moment you start thinking about being able to die, you can't do it. You can't go fast.
Well, I'm sure, not to go all Carl Jung and Freud here, but I'm sure that's always present in the back of your mind somewhere. You're not just bringing it to the surface.
It is in the sense that it's part of the appeal. It's part of the sense that there's something on the line, that this isn't just virtual. I can't just hit reset, restart, reboot. If I crash this car, we're going to be out, or we're going to be disadvantaged, or it's going to get destroyed, or I might get hurt. I've gotten lightly hurt a few times. I actually had the year we won 24 Hours of Le Mans in our class. I'd been training in this Formula 3.5 car. It's a really fast car. It's a really nice exercise to do, but it doesn't have power steering. So some of these race cars, especially the open seaters, they don't have power steering, which means that the steering wheel is basically directly connected to the front wheels. So if you crash one of those cars and the front wheels suddenly turn, you're really going to hurt your hands if you don't get your hands off the wheel. I hadn't raced enough of those cars to know that I had to get, or to have developed the instinct that I had to get my hands off the wheel. So I didn't. And I really hurt my hand. And this was just, I think, a month before the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So I thought, oh man, I'm going to have to miss it this year. I had not a cast, it was just seriously sprained. And then somehow, miraculously, like a week before the event, I was like, oh yeah, actually it's okay now. So got to do it. And that would have been grave regret if I would have seen my team go on to win the race and I would have to sit on the sidelines. But I really have been quite fortunate in the sense that most of my crashes have just been expensive or sporting inconvenient. They've never been something where I got seriously hurt. But I've seen plenty of people who have. In fact, my co-driver this year, and for several years, Petro Fittipaldi, drove a race car at Spa. Spa is one of the great race tracks of all time, and it has this iconic corner called Eau Rouge, which is probably the most famous corner in all of motorsports. It has a great compression before you climb uphill. It's an extremely fast, very difficult corner. And just as he does the compression, his car basically sets out and he loses his power steering and he drives straight into the wall and breaks both his legs and basically faced the prospect that maybe his career was over. I've had other teammates and people I know have serious injuries that's really hurt them. And yet what's funny, as you say, you'd think that would sink in. The year before we won in 2014, that same car had a Danish driver in it at Le Mans, at the race I was driving, who died. He lost control of the car when there was a bit of rain on the track, and the track was unfortunately designed in such a poor way that there was a very big tree right behind the railing, and he hit that tree at full speed, pulled 90 Gs, and was dead on the spot, which was just such an extremely awful experience to go through. I finished second that year, which should have been cause for a bunch of celebration, but it was just tainted by the fact that not only did a driver die, a fellow Dane died, a guy I knew died. That was pretty tough.
So that throw that into the pile of the things that have to be considered is the weather conditions, like you mentioned, of the track, whether it's dry or wet.
It's a huge part of it. Even just last year at Le Mans, it was raining and I was out, and I hadn't made a serious mistake at the 24 Hours of Le Mans since I did the first race in 2012, where I put it in the sand trap with like 4 hours to go, and we lost a couple of laps getting pulled out, but it didn't actually change anything for our result because that was just how the field was spread out. I'd made minor mistakes over the years, but nothing that really set us out. And at the race last year, when it was raining, I first clobbered a Ford Mustang when I made an overambitious pass on a damp part of the track and couldn't stop in time. And then felt absolutely awful as I sat in the gravel pit for 2 laps and knew that our race was over, a race where we were highly competitive. You're not blessed with a competitive car, a competitive team, and a competitive setup every year. I know how rare that is. So to know that we had a chance that year and I sort of squandered it felt really bad. But that got compounded when I got back on track, barely made it another stint, and then put it in the gravel trap again when it started raining on the entrance into Porsche. So this is part of why racing is so addicting too, because the highs are very, very high. When you win a race like the 24 Hours of Le Mans, it feels just incredible. There's so much emotion. But if you fuck it up, the lows are very, very low.
What are the things you're paying attention to when you're driving? What are the parameters? What are you loading in? Are you feeling the grip? Are you basically increasing the speed and seeing what, like a constant feedback system, effect it has on the grip? You're trying to manage that and try to find that optimal slip angle. Are you looking around using your eyes? Are you smelling things? Are you listening? Are you feeling the wind? Are you looking at the field too? Like, how did you not hit that guy at all? You get close within inches, right? So you have to pay attention to that too.
It's really interesting about that specific battle where we're literally a few inches apart. I can't fully explain it, but humans can develop an incredible sense of space where I can't see the edge of the back of my car, but I can know exactly where it is. I can have a mental model in my head that gives me the exact dimensions of this car so that I can run within a few inches of a competitor car or within a few inches of the wall and not hit either when things go well. The car is about 2 meters wide and it's quite long, 5 meters. And you can't see everything. The mirrors are actually kind of shit. There's no rear view mirror in these cars. You can't see out the back. You can only see through your 2 side mirrors. But you form this intuitive mental model when you get good enough at this. But what I actually pay attention to most is I run a program. What I try to do when I go to a racetrack is I try to load up the best program I know how for every single corner. What's my brake point? What's my acceleration point? What's my brake trailing curve? And I try to pick up that program in part just by finding it myself and how fast I can go, but even more so than that by copying my professional competitors, or not competitors, co-drivers. So I usually always race with a pro, and modern race cars produce an absolute enormous amount of data. And you can analyze all that data after each outing. You can see an exact trace of how much you pushed the brake pedal, how much you did in terms of steering inputs, when you got on the gas. You can see every millisecond you're losing is evident in those charts. So what I try to do is I try to look at the chart and then I try to load that in, and like that's what I got to do. Oh, in this corner 17, I have to be 10 bar lighter on the brake. So I try to load that program in and then I try to repeat it. Now, then there are all the things that changes. Your tires change quite a lot. These tires are made to only last 40 minutes in many cases. Sometimes at Le Mans, we can go longer, but at some racetracks, they'll last as little as 40 minutes before they really fall off. So you got to manage that the grip is constantly changing. So your program have to suddenly fit those changing circumstances. And then in endurance racing, you're constantly interacting with other cars because you're passing slower classes or you're getting passed by a faster class. So that's part of the equation. And then you're trying to dance the car around the limit of adhesion. So you got all those factors playing at the same time. But above all else for me is to try to become a robot. Like, how can I repeat this set of steps exactly as I'm supposed to for 2.5 hours straight without making 100 milliseconds worth of mistakes?
Yeah, low latency algorithm.
That's really a huge part of it, actually. Your latency is enormously important in terms of being able to catch when the car starts slipping. You get this sensation in your body that the G-forces are a little off, the slip angle is a little off, and then you have to counter steer. And obviously the best race car drivers just feel like an intuition. I have some intuition. I don't have all of it, so I do occasionally spin my car, but that's the challenge.
From everything you've studied and understand, what does it take to achieve mastery in racing? Like, what does it take to become the best race car driver in the world?
Obsession is part of it. When I read and hear about Senna and the other greats, they were just singularly focused. Max Verstappen is the current champion of the world, and he is the same kind. Max has been fascinating to watch. I mean, he's a phenomenal race car driver, but he also literally does nothing else. When he's not at the racetrack, he's driving sim racing. Like, he's literally in video games doing more racing when he's not doing all the racing he's already doing.
Is there a specific skill they have that like stands out to you as supernatural through all of that obsession? Like, what is it a bunch of factors, or are they actually able to, like you said, develop a sense? Is it they're able to get to the very edge of the slip?
They're able to develop very fine-tuned sensibilities for when the car is sliding. They can feel just these tiny moments or movements in the chassis that transports up, usually through their ass. That's why you call it like a butt meter that goes up, and you feel like the car is loose, or you feel like you're just about to lock up. You can really hone that tuning. And the other thing is you have to have really good reaction time. And when you look at great Formula One drivers, they can generally have a reaction time of just under 200 milliseconds, which is awesome. And even 10 milliseconds difference makes a huge difference. You'll see it when the Formula One grid, for example, they do a standing start and you see the 5 red lights come on. And when the last light goes out, they're supposed to release the clutch and get going. And they can time this. So you can see exactly who has the reaction time. And even being off by 20 milliseconds can make the difference of whether you're in front or behind at the first corner.
How much of winning is also just this strategy of jostling for position?
There's some of that, and some of it is also just nerve. Who wants it more? That's exactly when that sense of danger comes in. There's a great quote from Fernando Alonso when he was driving at Suzuka against Schumacher, I think. They're coming up to this incredibly fast corner. It's very dangerous. And Alonso basically accounts, I was going to make the pass because I knew he had a wife and kids at home.
That's so gangster.
Just absolutely right?
Wow.
That I knew he valued life more than I did. So there's a bit of poker sometimes in that. Who's going to yield? There's a bit of chicken race in that regard. And sometimes it doesn't work. No one yields and you both crash. But very often one person will blink first.
Can the pass be both on the inside and the outside? Or
you can pass wherever you want as long as you have just a slight part of the car on the racetrack.
And then you just improvise and take risks. What a sport. And then Senna, of course, is like a legendary risk taker.
Yes. And even before him, by the time, I mean, he died in the 90s. But by the time we got to the 90s, racing was already a lot safer than it was when Niki Lauda raced in the 60s. That level of danger is no longer there. There's still just a remnant of it, and it is still dangerous, but nothing like that. And it's a little hard to compare through the ages, like who's the greatest driver of all time. I think there's a fair argument that Senna is, but we don't have the data. We don't know who he was up against. Like, how would he fare if we pitted him against Max Verstappen today? I do think sometimes that you can have a bit of a nostalgia for the all-time greats, but the world moves forward and new records are being set all the time and the professionalism keeps improving. Sometimes to the detriment of the sport, I think. There's a lot of professional drivers who are not only just very good at driving, but are very good at being corporate spokespeople. And it used to be quite different. There used to be more characters in racing that had a bit more personality that they were allowed to shine because there weren't a billion sponsorships on the line that they were afraid to lose.
Ridiculous question. What's the greatest car ever made? Or maybe what's the funnest one to drive?
The greatest car for me of all time is the Pagani Sonda.
Okay, I'm looking this up. Pagani Sonda.
So the Pagani Sonda was made by this wonderful Argentinian called Horacio Pagani.
My God, that's a beautiful car. Wow.
It's a gorgeous car. You can look up mine. It's the Pagani Sonda HH. Yep. So that's a car I had made in 2010 after we visited the factory in Modena, and by sheer accident ended up with this car. But it became my favorite car in the world basically when I watched an episode of Top Gear, I think in 2005, where one of the presenters was driving the Pagani Zonda F around, and I just thought, that's the most beautiful car in the world. It is the most incredibly sounding car in the world. If I one day have the option, this is what I want.